breath. It's the very thing that connects us to the world, to each other, to every living being. Without breath, we cease to exist. But breath is more than just a physical act. Breath keeps us, it fuels our words. It is the root of all speech. It's the tool of our communication. The Latin for inspire, inspire, it means to breathe life into. To inspire is to ignite action, to align ourselves with the potential that already exists within us. I've been more alive to a conversation within myself for the past year, and I'd like to let you in on this voice in my head. In my field as a poet, a writer, and a life coach, I'm always in conversations. I dig me some conversations. But the thing is, we're all always in conversations, and we may not think that much of conversations. We think of them as just exchanges of information. But I want to tell you that conversations are creative, powerful acts. Conversations build skyscrapers. Conversations launch rockets. They form countries. Conversations form businesses and relationships and sustain those. And conversations form events like this. But what do we make of the way that these conversations shape us? The ones that we have with ourselves, with our important, intimate others, and with the work world and the professional world outside. How do these conversations shape us? To me, a conversation is just a natural way to listen to your life. It's natural because we're always in conversation, and it's natural because we're always in language. And so tonight, I'd like to invite you in to stopping an old conversation that you've been having. Something that's where you've been, maybe it's been keeping you looping and looping in the same behaviors, getting more or less the same outcomes. And I'd like to invite you to be open to a new conversation with yourself. I'd like to offer you a way and a reason to start that new conversation. And it's important because the conversation you have with yourself impacts every decision you make and every relationship you have. And you know, a lot of people might think that it's kind of selfish to have a conversation with yourself. But this kind of conversation isn't like when you start sharing something with someone and they hijack the conversation and make it all about them or change the subject to something they find more interesting. No, this conversation, this new one that you could be having with yourself, is a generous act because it can be bringing you into the world in a brave, courageous way, and because it involves listening. And it doesn't have to come from a big dramatic moment. It can come right now in this awareness and with just the intention that you're tired of the chronic way that you've been experiencing things and you would like to shift from an old conversation to a new one. For me, it was a bit of both. I had been shifting careers. I had been trying to do some self-development work, and I was in my learner's mindset. But then I did have a big dramatic moment. It was July 22nd of 2023, and I was paddleboarding for the first time with my brother and a friend, and we were paddleboarding on the Ocoee River on a beautiful Saturday. And it was just like I was gliding over a window of glass. It was beautiful, pristine. I could see into this reality of the bass and the trout and the algae on the rocks. Just a reality that I normally would just pass right over. Beautiful day. And then about 2 hours later, when we get to where the takeout is, I was expecting it to be about waist high. I took off my life jacket. My leg was still leashed to my board. A paddleboard's a lot like a surfboard where you're still leashed to it so it doesn't float off. And so I got off my board expecting it to be here, but instead it was about neck high, and it was a very powerful current. And I kept trying to get a toehold as I was getting forced back, and I kept thinking I would get a hold of it any minute now. And then as I was going back, something began to catch on my leash, and I began to be stuck there while I was being pulled. So I was struggling to stay on the surface of the paddleboard. And so things went from just fun and pleasant and easy to really serious, really, really fast. But I thought that I had it, and I struggled with it for a while as I got tired. And then, though, I realized I needed to call for help. And I said help, and it felt weird saying that help. And I saw the alarm on my friends' faces, but when they tried to come get to me, they were rushed down past me to the riverbank. So I knew I was on my own. And to make this long, harrowing journey short, I realized after a while I could neither get to my leash to undo the leash, and so I was going to have to make a decision. And so I didn't really know what else to do, and after a while I just let go of the board that was holding me up, and I surrendered to the current of the river. And I was still drowning because I was still tethered to my board. And so my body was fighting, and I was going up and down. And that was when this new conversation really began. And in the terror that my body was feeling and the adrenaline that was trying to keep me above water, I began to feel this deep acceptance of this may be the last few moments you have to be alive. And this voice in my head was saying, you didn't live courageously. You gave up your gift. You were too scared to do things that you shouldn't have been scared of. And these thoughts were going through my head as I literally thought, as water was going up my nose, I probably couldn't get back up the next time. And then my leash snapped. And I surfaced and I floated to the bank. And I remember looking up at the sky as I was heaving and through the branches, and I thought, it's all a second chance now. And something was embodied in me that I think normally is pretty abstract for us, that life is short and we're not that special and we will be forgotten, so what do we have to lose? I felt that embodied for a few days, but then I went right back into my normal routine behaviors, and I was like, kind of acting like nothing had really happened. And I started trying to bring myself back to the moment, and I was like, why is this hard? And I realized over time that it's because change is hard. And you don't get magically transformed just because you almost die. You still have to put actions behind your awareness. You'll still hold and cling to what you know, even when it no longer serves you. And surrendering to the currents of life outside of your control that are much more powerful than you is scary, and you don't know what's going to happen. And I remember I was reminded of a poem not long after the near drowning. It's by Stevie Smith. It's called Not Waving But Drowning. Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay there moaning. I was much further out than you thought, he said, and not waving, but drowning. Poor chap, he always loved larking, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. Oh, no, no, no. It was too cold always. Still, the dead one lay moaning. I was too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning. We are waving. Everything, nothing to see here. Wherever you go, think about it. We're waving when in reality we're full of anxieties. We're full of disappointments. Maybe relationships haven't gone the way we wanted. Maybe our careers aren't manifesting. We're struggling. Some of us drowning. And yet we wave as if everything is fine. Why do we avoid these conversations? I mean, fear, trauma, it's hard to change. But remember that your language reflects your thinking. And if you speak honestly to yourself and you listen and receive honestly what you're saying to yourself, you can begin to develop new awareness, and that awareness can lead to new intentions, and those intentions can lead to new actions, and that is how language can carry you to transformation. And that's why coaching can be so powerful. You can literally hear your words spoken to another person in reflective inquiry or just powerful questions, and then you really can no longer deny the reality of your thoughts. And that is one of the very first steps to making the changes and creating new actions. It's breaking free from denial. You can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. And there's this, just has bowled me over, this idea that there are two kinds of help. There's the kind of help that you do need to acknowledge, not deny. Ask for help, like me when I was on the board drowning and still was uncomfortable asking for help. And then when you do that, there is the kind of help you don't know you need that so often comes. I didn't know I needed my leash to snap for me to be able to be here right now. And that is the help I received. Carl Jung says, what you resist persists. And another famous Carl Rogers, said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. So this is my invitation to you to think of that conversation you're avoiding. And I want to invite you into a larger conversation with yourself that may align with more authentic potential that does lie within you by shifting the conversation. You know, talk is cheap when people put no action behind their vacuous words. And people who just talk, and project their reality outward all the time. But I assure you that the way you speak to yourself is always powerful, whether it is keeping you down and drowning, or whether it is lifting you up into courageous conversations about who you can be and what you can do, aligned with your values and who you really are. Just like breath, these conversations are what sustain us. They align us with who we are. So take a breath, listen to that voice inside, and start your courageous conversation. And here's how, from a short poem from David White, start close in. Start close in. Don't start with the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to start the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. Thank you.